Well, we want to welcome everyone to our second edition of Tourney Talk. And really the goal of it is to just get people in our industry, our rights holders, anybody that is a part of the team of making events happen on a call with different topics each week that we do them. This particular week, we have our hotels with us, our hotel partners, and we're just going to talk about kind of how COVID has affected their brands and things that they're doing to take the steps to ensure that all of our teams and travelers coming through their brands are, protected, and that they're meeting all the regulations and guidelines that we since have an effect with COVID. So I want to thank you guys for being here, and I would love to have everybody just kind of go around and introduce themselves on the panel. So I can start. I'm Shannon Barrows. I'm one of the owners of Pellucid Travel. We're very excited to be able to host these things and have people show up and find value in them each week. And so I will turn it over to you, Laura.
Hi, Laura Dermody. I'm also one of the owners of Pellucid Travel. And I think Shannon said it very well. We're excited to be hosting these each week or bi-weekly for you guys. And if there's a topic that you'd like to learn more about or have us do more information on, please let us know.
Yes. And then we have.
Oh, I can go.
You want to roll next?
Sure, I'll go. I am Maggie Bruns with Marriott International. I am a global account manager there, and I partner with Pellucid on your events for our Marriott hotels, and happy to be here.
I can go next. My name is Michael Cousins. I'm with Hilton Worldwide Sales. I specialize in the sports market, specifically the youth sports market, and have been working with Pellucid since their inception, basically, and have a long-standing relationship with many of their employees, and just happy to be here to connect with everybody.
I'll go next. I'm Marcy Callan. I'm the head coach and general manager of Fairport Swimming. I host a lot of big events in the Rochester area for the swimming community from all over the Northeast. And I've worked with Laura for a number of years, and I'm very happy that I'm able to come back in and have her guide me again. So this is great. Thank you.
Awesome.
Marcy, it's really interesting. Michael comes from the swimming world too, not in the New York region, but Michael is a coach right down in Virginia. Yeah,
I am. It's a big part of my life.
That's awesome. Awesome. Okay, well, I think we can get started. We have a series of questions that we would like to ask all of you on our panel. And then I think in the end, if we have time, anyone that has any questions and wants to engage in conversation, we're certainly going to welcome those in. You can certainly put a message in the chat area letting Laura know that you do have a question or you'd like to say something, and we'll make sure that we do our best to get to those. So without further ado, our first question would be, and I guess both of you can answer this. I think, Michael, I guess if you would like to go first on this one, that would be great.
Sure.
We know that a lot of hotels around the country were impacted by COVID. They have shutdowns or they're operating at limited capacity. We wanted to get a feel from you, just kind of an estimate or guesstimate, if you will, of what that landscape looks like right now as far as your brands go. Are a lot of them still shut down? Are they operating at limited capacity? Are there certain areas that are up and running in full swing?
It's a really good question. We were discussing this the other day on our team meeting that we have weekly. And the great news, and we receive these updates weekly also, is that 99% of our hotels are back online completely. So they're not in any kind of suspended operation status, which is awesome news. They are, in many cases, probably 3/4 to full staff. It depends on the market to some degree. And our managed hotels, especially, there are still some employees that, unfortunately, they're still going through furlough, but the vast majority of our employees have been brought back already, which is great news. As you've probably seen, especially with the all-suite focus service hotels, those tend to have, people wearing many hats at the moment still. You'll see in some cases general managers responding to RFPs when they're not typically the ones who may be doing that. But that's part of the reason that we're here, is to make sure that we're able to get the hotels the information they need and actually ensure that they have a fast response rate. Our world is always moving quickly, especially in sports. So speed to market is crucial. So we are thankful that we have 99% of our hotels open still, which is great.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Vicki, how about you?
Yeah, I would echo what Michael said. We're largely in the same situation. Majority of the hotels being open, operating at full capacity. We definitely still have some areas, some markets where we see that we have some staff furloughed, maybe reduced work schedules, and definitely working to move that forward and get everybody back 100% of the time. Again, to Michael's point, there are areas where people are wearing many hats and are maybe working in sales where they're not used to always working in sales, or maybe they're working in operations. And so it's an ever-changing landscape. I would say it changes probably daily, if not weekly. But again, we're just working as hard as we can to get back to where we were pre-COVID.
That's awesome. I feel like the second question you may have answered some of already, but I'm going to ask it and hope to dig a little deeper. How has COVID impacted the day-to-day operations at your hotels? I think one of the things you both just said was, there may be some limited staff and people are doing jobs that they didn't have to do before, and everybody sort of has to do whatever it takes to service the business volumes at hand. But over and above those types of things, is there any other thing that COVID has really impacted that we may want to be aware of? We may be thinking, hey, people aren't doing this or that or whatever, but there's really a general underlying reason for it, possibly, if that makes sense.
No, it makes sense. Do you have a preference for who answers first?
Oh, go ahead.
Well, what I've seen, it's impacted in several areas, as you can imagine. First being what you were talking about with, especially on the focus service side and all suite side, they're wearing multiple hats in many cases. But in addition to that, what COVID has unfortunately forced us to do is we've had to adapt a lot of the processes on the property. A lot of that has changed for the good. For example, like Hilton's clean stay policy that we have for all of our guests that are staying in our properties, the entire housekeeping or suite keeping process has been revamped. A lot of the chemicals and cleaning agents that we use, it's now, we've partnered with Lysol to do this. And so we have these industrial grade cleaning solutions that we're using. The actual cleaning process of high touch areas in the rooms and even in the public spaces is greatly enhanced. And even just the movement of traffic into and out of the hotel is different. The idea is to minimize contact with everybody as much as possible, but also to streamline or just really give as much of a contactless experience as possible, including from check-in to check-out. So our F&B as well with breakfast, that's been changed and that's adjusted. It gives many options to our guests that are staying. One of which is they can, in many cases, they use a third-party delivery service that we've partnered with in our local communities to provide a local cuisine option for those that may want to partake in some kind of breakfast option. If the hotel hasn't gone through that approach, they can they'll offer like a knock and drop, for example. So they've ordered something from the hotel and it's delivered, but there's nobody actually that you're interacting with at any given time. And some other hotels where the restrictions might be a little bit more relaxed, we do have options that are in person at the hotel, but obviously we're following all of the necessary protocols to do that. So
I have a question you kind of sparked up. Something came to my mind actually. So when I'm traveling with our sports teams, I have children who play and participate still. I noticed a lot of the hotels that typically include breakfast, their breakfast has totally changed. Is that like something you do across the brand, or is that possibly something that franchisees decide, or how does that work?
Really good question. We are actually in the final stages, if I'm not mistaken, of coming up with specific brand guidance for breakfast because it does vary even between brands in general, even pre-COVID. So now they're working on ways to kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Have some consistency across the brands around the
Mhm.
country, while also taking into account that the restrictions and requirements can be a little bit different from state to state. So
Mhm.
they're trying to make that more consistent. But unfortunately, there's only so many things that they can do right now, for
Mhm.
breakfast, just for a variety of reasons. It's nothing else to maintain the distancing that's needed,
Mhm.
and the proper placement and minimizing the close contact.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes
mhm.
sense. Maggie, how do you feel about that same question? Does your answer kind of mimic or?
Yeah, I mean, our answers are similar. We're definitely changing our everyday practices. We put in 10 standard protocols that were mandatory across every hotel. It drills down into our properties, making sure everybody's properly trained. We've partnered outside the organization as well with companies like Ecolab, who are synonymous with cleaning and sanitization. It's to Michael's point again, the enhanced cleaning. It was changing the way that we were attacking our rooms and those high touch surfaces in the public areas, the food and beverage areas. What was really wonderful about it was if you weren't a Bonvoy member, now was the time to really get involved in that because the Bonvoy app made everything so much more contactless. We had mobile check-in, check-out. Your phone became your key. You were able to chat with the hotels through your phone, through the app prior to arrival, during arrival, and even after arrival. And then dining options were available through the app as well. For us, I would say it's very similar with breakfast too.
Mhm.
Some things have changed. Maybe we've reduced capacities in public areas for dining. Um, it is largely market by market, working with city and county and state regulations. Things have become, again, contact free. So where you may have had self-serve food, now you have packaged to go breakfast items, or you have somebody in a mask serving your food options to you, but very, very similar and ever changing still.
Yeah. Have any of your hotels that you know of just like completely like so the limited service hotels that typically would serve the breakfast buffet? I've noticed a lot of them, as I said, are kind of going to a different sort of option that really isn't necessarily the buffet, but they have offerings. Have any of them, or is it a brand standard for any of them, just to not include breakfast at all, even though that's part of their standard due to COVID?
I don't think on our side that we have anybody that has completely suspended offering a breakfast component. That the majority of the time they've just, developed a different way to do it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes.
And that's pretty similar on our side as well. To Maggie's point, there aren't, to my knowledge, there aren't any properties that have fully suspended breakfast at all completely.
Okay.
There have just been adjustments that they've made, but we realize that that's a key point of the stay, especially in the sports world. So it's something that, to my knowledge, it's still offered at every property. And to Maggie's point as well, these are also available all through the app to ensure that it's contactless if you'd like to go that route. So,
Awesome. Yeah, that
I
makes
have
it
a-
really, really nice.
It does. I have a question for you about another component that's often very important to teams that can be a little bit tricky during COVID times, and you may or may not have an answer for this. This may very well be per hotel, per state, and what they're allowing for. But oftentimes people will be looking for, hey, we'd really like to have a pizza party, or can you give us a small space? Can we congregate in the lobby? Can we, have some drinks by the pool, whatever that might be? How are hotels handling that these days? Is it on an ad hoc basis, or do you guys have brand standards that's kind of regulating that piece of it?
Yeah, I can take that one first. I don't know that we have brand standards for something like that. I think, again, that goes back to county and state regulations. But I think that if that is something that is important, if the team knows that that's something that's important to them, if they're working with Pellucid on that type of request, so that when we talk about the tournament or the event and we're looking at the RFP, we can try to steer the business towards hotels that are able to do something with that.
Mhm.
And
Makes,
I would agree with Maggie. It's very similar with Hilton as well. It's more influenced by the local restrictions and requirements that they have. To my knowledge, I'm not aware of hotels that have fully boarded like blocked off the actual meeting space, and we encourage them to be creative in ways that would still allow for mitigation protocols. So it's allowed. One thing it has done, I guess, the silver lining is it's caused us to really use our creative side to make
Right.
sure that we're addressing everybody's needs and so forth.
absolutely. I feel like our next question you've kind of answered as well, in a way, but again, if you could elaborate. So through COVID, I know we all kind of focus on the things that have been taken away from us, and you've just gave examples of great things that have actually come out of it. Do you feel like any of your, cleaning procedures or products that you're using are going to be like implemented long after COVID? Like, did the good things that have come out of it, do you see them becoming brand standards in the near future?
I mean, I think this is probably just a question that might be my opinion, but
Right.
yes, I do think these things, I mean, when they looked at all of this, when they partnered with people like Ecolab and they put these 10 standards in place, it was with the idea that these were going to become the new norm, right? This was going to become the new everyday, just like we're doing in our personal lives. So I do think that a lot of this, if not all of it, is here to stay. The app, like I was talking about, those were things that were partially in place. They were planned. We were always going to do them. It just sped the process up,
Mhm.
especially with like the mobile key and all of that. So I do think that these things are here to stay.
Right. And as far as the COVID cleaning procedures and sanitization procedures, are those currently your brand standards as of now? Like, so in other words, your brand has totally thought this out, implemented it, and every one of your brands are, supposed to be utilizing and offering the same thing as far as sanitization goes, so your
Yeah.
standards.
Yeah, for us, it's company wide. It's a 10-point process that they have descended upon all of our hotels, regardless of what brand they're falling under. And it's a train and sustain process where we don't want to just roll it out once. We've put policies in place, people in place to make sure that there's pull through daily accountability so that we keep up on this moving forward.
Yeah.
I have to almost completely echo what Maggie is saying. It's I haven't received an official announcement of any kind, so this would probably be more of an educated guess, if for lack of a better word. But I see these becoming permanent, long-term solutions. Just because I think we were headed that way anyway. There was always concern from guests about, just they want to make sure that they're in a clean environment. So
Mhm.
there was always that innovative approach to try to always address that and continue to evolve with that approach. But so I feel confident that they will be long-term solutions, and in many cases, I think whatever cost is associated with it will be outweighed by the benefit of providing that service to the guest and providing the comfort that they need. And as far as whether they're brand standards now, they are currently with the 10-point program that we have as well, with all of the high touch areas in the public as well as in the guest rooms. Those are all areas that are part of our brand standards. They are part of the inspection process. And so I don't see those changing,
Mhm.
to be honest, which I think is a good thing. That's great for our
Right.
guests and to ensure that, we're keeping everybody safe and so
Oh
forth.
yeah, absolutely. And I think it's funny when you said the cost, because my brain was going there. Well, geez, this is obviously an added expense, right, on the brands to bring in all these added precautions, and in some cases, it probably even adds more staff to roll out what needs to be done and whatnot. And those are things, our typical travelers don't really think about or think through. This is kind of a loaded question, but as far as rates go, and, have you seen a big impact with COVID? And I know this is definitely loaded because there's probably areas where, it completely drops off and hotels will take anything because they have to survive. And then there's areas that are completely open and flourishing. But just kind of wondering what the overall talk, the water cooler talk is in your office about rates and just what they look like. And if they have dropped, how are we getting them back? And just what does that look like for you?
I'll go first if you like, Maggie.
Sure.
I think,
We're the game show, by the way, between you guys. You guys both have the most awesome brands. So it's like, yes, I do this. Oh, so do I. And so do I. And I love it.
We were
Yeah.
a perfect match.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. But it's part of our responsibility to our hotels is that we're there as a partner for them. And part of that involves, strategizing with them and having discussions about any kind of piece of business. And so when we're sending them to the various hotels on your behalf, are the hotels, could they be a little misguided sometimes? It's possible with their rates that they would submit, but that's part of what we're here for, is to make sure we're having those in-depth discussions. It's always up to the hotel what they would like to offer as a rate. But we're here to help them understand just what trends are out there, what the expectations are, the trajectory of the recovery, and what people are honestly forecasting for the rest of the year. In many cases, hotels they're excited for any kind of recovery and they want it to come quickly. And but when you're comparing about what people might consider lost revenue, 2020 was just lost altogether. So when you're looking at 2021 and comparing that to 2020, there really isn't much that you need to compare in many cases. It's your hotel or the hotel itself was suffering, was heavily impacted by the virus, as you can imagine. So 2021 is just a great opportunity to recover. And as we're here, we're also a partner with you guys. And so we're talking with the hotels about how to make those partnerships long-term. And you do that with those discussions about what's going to be great for your hotel, what's going to make you more competitive going forward. And we don't need to recover to 2019 all in 1 year. I know we would love to, but that's not the reality that we're in. And it's a slow process. I think we're going to get there, but it's just going to be, not as fast as we would like. So, but in the meantime, the sports world continues to move. And so I think if you're seeing rates that are a little bit outrageous or might seem that way, that's where we step in to make sure we're having those discussions with them.
Sure. Absolutely.
And I would say, again, we're very similar to what Michael's doing. It will vary in some markets. Yes, will you see some drop dead gorgeous rates? Absolutely. But oftentimes you'll see rates where they were in 2019 as well. And that has a lot to do outside of the sports world, where we're moving other groups, other market segments like corporate and association or whatever the business might be. So many people were impacted during 2020 with their programs that they've had to, what we've call lift and shift, moving their dates and then moving their dates again and then moving their dates again. And so there's been crazy compression. And I would say rooms, which, obviously sports are more apt to take rooms rather than space, but rooms are at a premium right now. Not necessarily from a rate standpoint, but just from an availability standpoint. Just trying to be able to get everybody into where they want to be. And like Michael said, we found it's going to be a much slower process too, to get back to where we were. So I think it's hard to say that rates are low or rates are high. It's just going to vary.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think Laura and I could both vouch to say that exactly what you just said is what we see. I mean, sometimes it's like you go to an area and you can't even believe that you can't get rooms, right? And you're really struggling to get it. And we're looking at it going, but wait, you're basically shut down. It's business, right? But everybody's kind of doing the same thing. And I think it is a balancing act with kind of to mimic what you said, I mean, there's events that we book and then a month later we have to move and then we have to move it again. I mean, we had one event move 3 times, finally landed and took place because of COVID. So there's a lot of moving parts. And I
Mhm.
think one thing that our customers don't necessarily understand is that it does take time to get contracts to get everything set up, right? So we're moving and everybody wants instant gratification. And sometimes that takes the process is longer, especially I think now with COVID, with lack of staff, with, it's
Right.
hard. There's a lot of heavy lifting going on to pull off events, but I'm super excited that our clients are trusting all of us on this call to make those events happen, right? And that we will get to the end result of hopefully pulling it off. But yeah, we definitely see a lot of that. So
And
you're
it's one thing I've seen, and I don't want to speak for Maggie, but I would assume it's relatively similar, is when hotels, let's say they're bidding on a piece of business that's 8 or 9 months from now, and submitting a proposal. The hope is that we're in a better position at that point. And so many times rates might be offered based on that kind of approach. But as we're discussing it with them, the goal is to make sure that everything is realistic and flexible. That's really the big part, is that we just don't have the luxury of being holding as steadfast to some of these terms as we were in 2019 and
Yes.
earlier. So and that's one thing that I want to just applaud everybody on, is that so many hotels across the industry have understood that and they're really thinking outside the box on how to be a good partner while also making it realistic for everybody. So because we all have the same goal, we want it to move forward.
Great.
I would agree.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, sports is a market where we've always been flexible on some terms anyway, just because of the nature of the beast, right? But we've had to become even more flexible than we were previously. And, Marriott overall has worked to say, hey, we want to make it easy to do business with us. And so that's the directive that they've given the hotels. And same to Michael's point, we all just want to get moving forward back to where we were.
That's actually a really good point. It was one of the questions I had written down is, obviously, there's a lot of unknowns out there, and I've seen firsthand hotels' willingness to be flexible when events do move last minute, or, hey, I'm sorry, we really thought this certain state would be open by now, but they're just not. And so we have to release these blocks or these rooms or something like that. So for our tournament directors who are trying to plan and move forward, during this unknown time period, can you guys speak to the flexibility as it relates to individual cancellations and those kinds of policies that you've seen within your brands? Obviously, I understand it changes per hotel and it changes, day to day. And so what we say today may not be tomorrow, but just that encouragement to know that the brands are working, with the tournament directors, hopeful to make it happen, but, they can be flexible, like you spoke about.
I mean, I would say you're right. It is largely hotel by hotel and market by market, but Marriott overall, one of the first things they did was change the individual cancellation policy and make it much less restrictive than it had become in the last few years as one guiding principle overall for the entire company. But beyond that, when we look at tournaments, we're working with each of those events individually and separately based upon their needs and what's going on at the hotel. And, there's always room for conversation on what that specific event might need.
I have to agree with Maggie.
Yeah, I don't want you to agree.
I know, right? But the truth is that it does vary by market, by hotel. I will say that it's always up to the hotel. It's a property-based decision.
Right.
But when we're talking with them, part of the process before we're even getting to that point, part of the process where they're submitting their proposals is that we're having those discussions with the hotels so that they're aware, hey, if this for some reason needs to move or, God forbid it cancels completely, we need to have that kind of approach. We have to have a plan for that in the back of minds, so to speak, be ready to be flexible with that. But prior to COVID, obviously, terms were a lot tighter. Now hotels are, I have personally yet to see a hotel that's really tried to hold fast to any major, performance requirements and so forth. They've been very understanding, and I think it just helps with the fact that we have the same goal. We all want this to move forward, and if we're trying to dig our heels in, it doesn't help anybody.
Listen, if you're on the, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say we all benefit when the event can finally move forward. So the best thing to do is ensure that we have these great partnerships in place.
Yes. And what I was going to say, if you guys are ever on the phone, because we have had a lot of events move, and from our staff standpoint, this may not even sound normal, but like it almost breaks our heart, right? Like we put this here and this hotel is going to get this revenue and we're so excited and it's going to take place. And then, I mean, we just had this happen this week. It's for, 2 weeks out and we have to move the event. And, these hotels have suffered so much, through the past year with revenues just being depleted, that when they get something, they're equally so excited, and they have people that get to be on schedules and work and forecasts, and then we rip it from them. And it's like, we're these villains when we have no control over it. And I mean, it's obviously extra work for my team to move events too. So it's definitely not something we would ever support or want, but it is happening with COVID. So if you ever do talk to hotels and they're just feeling really upset about it, please do extend our sincere, heartfelt apologies as best as you can, because we're on the same team as you, right? We want to make sure that these events take place in their towns and in their hotels. But it has been really tumultuous lately with events just booking, getting everything solid. Everybody's done the work. We're ready for arrival, and boom, it's out. And sometimes to no understanding to the hotel because their area is still open. But what they don't realize is, all these other teams from this town can't come, or, there's restrictions somewhere else so there's a lot in play with moving things around, and anything you guys can do to just kind of help have those conversations and ease their angst is also appreciated, because we feel it, and it does not feel good to have to do, but it is business, and that's what we have to do.
Right.
Well, and
happy to pass that along.
Absolutely. And I was going to say, the other thing is what I've seen, and in particular in the sports world, it's not just the mitigation steps or restrictions that we might have in place in these various locations and states around the country. There are, I guess, trickle down effects that can also impact these tournaments. Most recently, there was one that the venue itself wanted a huge non-refundable deposit when it wasn't the case previously. And so that caused the tournament to have to shift. And that was an indirect impact from COVID due to lost revenue in the previous year. So there are so many factors that were impacted by COVID, which means it's just all the more reason why we just have to ensure that we're maintaining these relationships with our customers and our hotels, and ensuring that we're all on the same page and offer that flexibility.
Right. Keeping the lines of communication open.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And to both of your points, one of the things I would like to stress to our tournament directors is I know a lot of them are trying to figure out, do I move it? My state's not open. I have events held at schools and colleges, and they're not renting or leasing to anybody right now. I may need to move this to a new location. One of the ways that people like, Maggie and Michael are super helpful to us and our other hotel partners is moving events to new areas that you may not have ever worked in before. Whether it's within the same state or a new state, it's definitely a trend that we've seen this year due to COVID. And, I do think it's going to, in my opinion, again, I'm not an expert, but I would imagine that it's going to continue until everybody's, back open and in a normal state. And, some of these events may continue to go to the new location because they found this hidden gem that they never knew about. And so, one of the ways that Maggie and Michael specifically have been helping us is moving our events to places they've never been before, or even we've never worked in before, and helping us develop and foster those relationships with the local hotels. So to any of our tournament directors who are considering that or hemming and hawing about that piece of it, it's an area that, you know, they're well equipped to help us and create those relationships locally.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a really
Yeah.
good point. How about this? Is there anything either one of your brands has done or had large conversations around about just making sure that when you're bringing teams in, you're still able to fulfill, you know, their needs and requirements, because they are typically traveling in larger groups, and you know they do require meals and just different things that the hotel may not be used to with the average business traveler. Is there anything that we need to be aware of, that maybe we need to let our customers know, hey, this isn't happening, or we can maybe make their stay better by understanding different things you're doing and letting them know in advance?
I would say it's really going to be hotel dependent. And this kind of goes back to what I was saying before. If there are things that are specifically important to this group of travelers or this tournament, you know, if this group of travelers knows they absolutely have to have access to a pool, and maybe we have a hotel with a pool that's not open. It's kind of the same scenario, that just having those communications with you guys when they're placing their group or going to schedule their event, so that when you put the call out to us for assistance, we can make sure we're addressing a lot of that. Checking the hotel websites is a lot of good information on there too, if there's anything that's been temporarily suspended or changed or anything to do with that. Marriott has a whole website set up for following any cleanliness things we're doing, and that's something I can make sure that you guys have if you need that. But it's really having those conversations and trying to get in front of it as much as possible so that we can match you up with hotels that are hitting those needs.
Yep, makes sense.
To echo that, and Hilton is in a very similar position. One thing I will say that I guess you could call it a silver lining is that the number of hotels that are willing to participate in the sports market business has increased, you know, which is a great thing.
Sure has. It's great.
which I love. I love to see it. Predominantly, it's obviously our full service, our larger hotels that typically, you know, whether it's a price issue or a rate issue or you know, just a lot of the amenities that have a cost that you wouldn't find at a focus service property. These full service properties are willing to participate in many ways, and I love that. So I love having those discussions with them. But because of that, they may not necessarily be as experienced in working in the youth sports world. So it's an opportunity to have those discussions about bus parking and how does that work? What kind of a breakfast need are these teams going to have? Room types that they might need, little things like that, or even reservations, how those are going to come through. How do we qualify the calls at the front desk? Things like that they may not have as much experience from a sports perspective. Those are the things that we've been able to do. And so it's great when we're able to include all these hotels that normally they would say thank you, but, you know, respectfully no. And now they're ready to play. So I love it. That's a good silver lining in this case.
And big blocks too. They always have, you know, great, huge numbers of rooms that we can put multiple teams in one location. I love it. It makes me so happy to see those come through, and then hopefully create a new relationship where they may, you know, we may have an opportunity to use them in the future, even when things come back to normal. So
absolutely.
Love it. I have a question for you guys, and it kind of jumps back to something that you were talking about earlier, both of you guys, about your mobile check-in. And obviously individuals can do that on their app through their rewards program number, I'm assuming, and if I'm wrong, correct me. But what about our teams? So we do have colleges, universities, or even a hockey group coming up in the next couple of weeks where it's mostly going to be roomingless Masterville. Is there a touchless check-in sort of situation for something like that. I went to a hotel partner last weekend in person to drop something off, and they'd already checked the whole team in, and they had everything waiting for them, just so that there wasn't 30 people sitting in the lobby for half an hour waiting. What's the procedure for team check-in that you guys have noticed?
I mean, I think that those are things that we've had in place for many years. I mean, I remember being on property and we would have whole teams come in and we would pre-key them and check them in so that it was smooth. If we knew at time they were coming, we could stagger. Arrivals would be something that we would look to do nowadays so that we don't have so many people filling the lobby all at one time. But it's absolutely easy to pre-key and pre-check in teams so that they can swing by, grab their key and go straight to their rooms.
Perfect.
And
I think for sports teams too, though, Maggie, tell me if it's just because I'm like a Marriott member, but so I travel with cheer, and we all have to book through a third party, not my third party, but a different third party.
Mhm.
And I get the email, that I can do the keyless check-in. I can, right on my phone. So I do think they do offer it to teams, but I think the question is, do they have to be a Marriott rewards number in order to get that? Like, I'm not sure if everybody on my team got that or if just I got that.
That is a good question. I am not 100% certain on that. We really focus on the Bonvoy members.
Yes.
I personally haven't had an experience where I haven't had somebody be able to do something if they weren't a Bonvoy member. So that's something I can clarify for you and get back to you guys on.
That'd be awesome, because I think that would be a huge value too for us to put out in our information on all our brands, really, if they do have that keyless check-in, I think in advance. And I think it's super, it's super easy, right? And it
Right.
totally cuts down and minimizes all of the contact, but it's also really convenient when you're driving up there and you just click check in, get your key and go to the room.
and with Hilton, I think it's a similar position. Very recently, I've started that discussion with our honors team about being able to check in for an entire team through the honors app that we have. That's to be determined. I have not been able to get a solid response on that yet.
Okay.
But I do know that in the meantime, one of the things that we've been pushing, and this was a functionality before COVID, but it's even more important to highlight it now, is that you can connect with the hotel through the chat feature in the honors app. So that is a way to connect with them quickly, allow them to the time that they need to pre-key, like to Maggie's point, and check them all in. And then that way you only need one person to actually collect the keys. It minimizes the contact at the front desk. It allows the teams to go from the bus to their rooms, and there's no contact in between. So I can certainly get a definite answer on it, but in the meantime, that is one easy way to do it. And that I can say that having used it recently myself, they are diligent with their follow-up at the hotel through the chat app. So I personally love it, but I think it would work phenomenally to the team perspective.
Perfect. And, for anybody who, is staying in a brand that maybe they're not used to, Marriott, Bonvoy, and the Hilton Honors programs are both free programs. You can go to the website and just sign up for it. And that keyless, or I'm sorry, contactless, not keyless, contactless check-in and check out, right? Check out as well, as part of the game there. So I would encourage everybody to go sign up no matter what.
Yes, of course. Okay, last thing we want to do is just offer Maggie and Michael the floor in the event there's anything you want anyone on the call to know in addition about your brand that we may not have spoke about, and if not, it's totally fine. I don't know if there's any questions after that.
Yeah, we can do the brand initiatives, any other initiatives as it relates to, even if it's meetings space or, anything that you wanted to chat about that you'd like for our partners and CVBs or sports commissions or tournament directors or college coaches or teams to know, moving forward.
I think for us, it's the thing that we want everybody to know most, and Michael touched on a little bit already himself, that we're just here to be good partners. We want to find the answers to the questions or share with you everything that we've been doing to help keep all of our guests and our associates safe during these crazy times. And whether that be our Bonvoy app initiatives, our cleanliness programs at our hotels with respect to food and beverage, or guest rooms. We are doing things in meeting spaces as well. If you had a need for meeting space, where hybrid is the big talk now, right? Everybody's doing hybrid meetings. We've got all sorts of meeting tools for hybrid meetings as well. So, you know, all that information is out there, but we just really have the shared common goal, like all of you, to get back to where we were before. Business as usual is what we're striving for. So thank you again.
Thank you.
And I'm going to do it one more time, but I'm going to echo Maggie's statement. But to touch on it, I think hybrid is the big term. Hybrid and pivot were the two big terms that I would hear. I was actually joking on one of our calls earlier this week. I heard somebody use the word pivot again, and I was like, it reminds me of that scene from Friends, so
with
that's
the
first
couch.
thing.
Yeah.
What?
Yes, that's the first thing. But I was like, I have heard this song, this word so much lately, especially in 2020. It's a great descriptive word. That's what we were doing. But so the word pivot and hybrid, those are big in our industry right now. And so obviously there's a big push to ensure that not just the sports world, but in any other market segment, they understand what we're doing to ensure that they can conduct a safe and successful event. And a lot of that does involve a hybrid approach. So we're offering things like our Hilton Event Ready program. There's a playbook that we actually offer online to our customers, and they can tab through any section, and it answers virtually every question you might have. But we also are doing virtual site tours with many of our properties to allow people to understand, feel safe. They don't have to travel, but they get the full experience. And so there's a lot of initiative behind that. But most importantly, I think since we all want this to be a much better year this year, but especially in sports, I know there's such a big focus on the sports world right now, because that is where our recovery is going to be kickstarted, that and the government market. And I would love to be able to elevate those successful stories of events much more to our community, to help them understand that we are moving forward. Things are successful, and we're doing it with the proper procedures and keeping people safe. And so I just think it's important that people understand that it is possible. So we've adapted, and we're going to continue to do that, but we're going to do this in a safe way, with their safety our primary focus. But I'm looking forward to these events that you guys are coordinating. I am fingers crossed that they are going to continue to move forward. So I really hope they do.
Great.
Same here. Absolutely. I wanted to ask one more question too, just so that if anybody on here or who sees the recording who may want to stay up on the latest information as it relates to any of your cleanliness process, procedures, information that they need, where is the best place for them to go to find that most up-to-date information? Maggie?
I mean, really, if you go to Marriott.com, which is nice and easy for everybody to remember, they have links to everything, whether it's about our cleanliness programs, what our most recent initiatives we've put out for hybrid meetings. All of it can be found if they just start with that basic Marriott.com website.
Perfect.
And the same thing with Hilton. So it's it's easily accessible, and I can certainly provide some other material that can be forwarded around. That's
Sure.
Really easy to use, and it's not they aren't huge documents, so it's easy to understand. And we're always here to answer questions. That's really what we're here for. So
Awesome.
Perfect. Well, you guys have been such great partners to us through all of this. I know I know that we wouldn't be as successful as we are without you guys and your team. Both of you have tremendous teams supporting you. And it really helps all of us, our tournament directors, our attendees, everybody involved. It really helps us all get the best experience out of all of this. So we really appreciate your partnerships and everything that you're doing to help us move forward, as well as our tournament directors and all the people involved.
And
Thank
I
you. We-
echo
Can help.
Yeah, I am too. Absolutely. We appreciate it.
on purpose. No, I'm just no, Laura's absolutely right. We couldn't do what we do without all of you. And I think it's super important for just everybody on the call to realize with the trying times and moving things and whatever needs to happen to pull these events off, you guys are right there in the trenches with us, making it happen. And we really value it 100%. You guys are just awesome. And thank you for being on this call. I think we picked two of our faves for sure. And you guys literally, like, you could, honestly, your brands are great. You guys are great. So thank you so much. Laura, I can't necessarily see very well. I don't think there's anybody in the chat asking anything. If anyone wants to unmute their microphone and say anything, feel free. We'll give it a couple of seconds. And if not, I think you guys have done a superb job.
Well, we appreciate you guys and all that you do.
Thanks for
Truthfully.
having us today and giving us this
Absolutely.
platform to talk to you.
Michael, I have a question for you since you have a swimming background.
Yeah.
You coached in Virginia, is that correct?
Yes, I still do. I coach for Nova Swimming
Oh, wow.
here in Richmond.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Yes. Because we are venturing possibly to Virginia, Christiansburg Aquatic Center for the sectional meet. We have 4 swimmers that have qualified. The meet is starting the 26th of March, and we have
Mhm.
no information yet. So
Oh,
no hotels, no nothing. So, we're just waiting for that meet announcement and the possibility of that they're going to have hotel information. So
we're in the same position, and I can tell you that's been a point of frustration at the pool and the office as well. But we have swimmers that are attending or planning to attend that event too, that meet, and I really hope it does go forward.
yeah.
There are ways that they can ensure that they move forward that they may not seem ideal. We may not have spectators. You may not be you have a certain number of people that could be on deck at one time, but it's feasible. So I really hope they can do it.
Well, I think they can do it. It's just a matter if we can get in. That's going to be the thing. I think, entries are limited, and it's going to be quite the entry. I anticipate the meet being full in about 5 minutes after it opens. So
That's a good thing. That's great, right? I mean, unfortunately, maybe not everybody will get to swim, but man, I'm just so excited. Anytime I hear, I'm like a little kid. Anytime I hear of events actually happening, I get so excited. Yes. I might have no affiliation with the events at all, but I'm just so happy to hear, because it gives me hope that, it's just going to be a snowball effect, that things will continue to move forward. And once somebody says, okay, well, I didn't think I could run an event, but they just did it and they did it successfully. How did they do it? Okay, let me dig in here. Let me figure out how I can do this. So that's
that's Virginia. Virginia, yes. New York, no.
So
we're gonna get there, Marcy.
Set up a rogue pool for everybody that doesn't get in. Set up like a rogue pool, and anybody that doesn't get in, you're still gonna host the event and make it happen.
They're actually having 2 setups. If you don't get into the first 3-day portion, you can automatically go into a second portion. It's going to be like 2 different meets. So we'll see how that goes too. I don't know. So it'll be interesting.
That flexibility, it's being tested, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But as long as we can do it.
So we'll let you know how that all goes.
Well, maybe you guys can actually meet in person. Who knows down there? But Marcy, I'd be happy to connect you with Michael offline so you guys can chat swimming, or maybe Michael can help you with some hotels down at the meet.
That'd be great. Thank you.
That'd be great. Anytime.
All right.
Well, I don't see any other questions in the chat, unless, I know a lot of the folks that I send a note out to weren't able to make it today, but they definitely asked for the recording. So, I'll be sure to to get this out to everybody and make sure that people are aware of everything that you guys are doing, the brands are doing, you know, to keep people safe when they're traveling for sports.
Awesome.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. We appreciate it.